And my guest today is Ken Shropshire, who is the David V. Hock Professor of Legal Studies and Business Ethics, Professor Emeritus of Africana Studies, Senior Advisor to the Dean for the Coalition for Equity and Opportunity at the Wharton School. Thank you all for attending. It's been great having you. No,
you left out 5 titles for crying out
I
loud.
left out the whole ASU thing. We're not even going there in your past. Ken, thanks for showing up today. Appreciate it.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
So pretty much the way we like to start our little show here is to tell us a little bit about what you're doing these days, and kind of your path to, how you ended up in pretty much in an academic environment.
Man, to try to make a long journey interesting is complex, but for the short version of a long journey, you know what? So I had been at Wharton for 30 plus years and had an opportunity to come down to ASU ended up being for 5 years. And I was really looking to shut down, and I was going to approach you to start the Hacker and Shropshire Associates Consultants Extraordinaire or something, so there's going to be some path other than working at a university or being a lawyer, that sort of thing. Then I got approached by, I shouldn't even say, I actually called her first, that there was a new African-American woman dean appointed to the Wharton School where I had been, and where there had always been a white heterosexual male dean for the history of the school. So this was really monumental, and this was, at that time, the beginning of the pandemic for us all, when we're all kind of making these decisions about what's important in life. So I reached her, just welcome and anything I can do. I'm not at Wharton anymore, but if I can help at all. And after a few conversations, she said, "Well, I have this idea. You've done a lot of work on equity and opportunity in sports. How would you like to do some work more broadly for an idea that I have? And that is the Wharton Coalition for Equity and Opportunity, Wharton CEO." And I said, nah. And not exactly like that, but then kept talking with her. And here's what happened, Bobby, just I talk about these long journeys and this sort of stuff. And your life has been a degree of this. Mine had, other people have had the same thing. These issues of equity and opportunity, however you want to define them, whether it's LGBTQ, gender-related issues, for me, predominantly race issues. A lot of times we've dealt with them in our professional capacity, but we haven't let them capture our entire lives and be who we are. And in fact, I can imagine you in, meetings at Fox, where I'm in meetings at a university, and an issue comes up and they look on race and they look to me, and I almost overtly say, "Hey, I'm the lawyer, I'm the finance guy. Why are you going to ask me about this social issue?" Just to say, just because I'm the black guy in the room, that's not what I have to do. So when she started talking to me about this, I did have one of those moments where I said, I am now officially an old man. I'm not trying to get that next job. This is, and Bobby, not to take you with me, but you do start thinking a little bit about legacy. You think about that whole thing that whatever your religious orientation, they always say that, did you feed the hungry? Did you clothe the clothesless? And did you house the homeless? What kind of good have you done? So that's how this whole thing evolved. So now I am Professor Emeritus, which is fancy way of saying he's no longer obligated to go to faculty meetings, and I am the faculty director of the Wharton Coalition for Equity and Opportunity, building this thing up. And I'm also senior advisor, which you can't be old without being a senior advisor to somebody.
Yeah.
Senior advisor to the dean. But a big part, and related to Sports Shorts, for those of you who haven't left yet, a big part of the coalition is sports. It's sports and entertainment. Well, is that the longest answer in the history of Sports Shorts?
Oh, no. I won't name names, but no. But that's really helpful. So, you and I could spend a bunch of hours talking about a lot of things, but I want to touch upon a couple things. A, let's not lose sight of the fact that it's February, it's Black History Month, and B, it's Super Bowl week. And there's some spectacularly unique things happening with respect to the Super Bowl. A, it's the first Super Bowl with 2 starting Black quarterbacks. And B, you have Amber Lockwood, an assistant coach on the Eagles staff, an African-American woman coach in a Super Bowl. Now, I know you come from a perspective of being a rabble-rousing college student saying, we're not playing unless we get a Black coach.
But you know what? It's great that we do have 2 Black quarterbacks. It's great that we have Black female assistant participating for the Eagles. It's, somebody just said today, I was at an event for Rise. I'm down in Phoenix in the Valley of the Sun, kind of going to the Super Bowl route. But somebody said there, this whole idea of being the first and how important is that? And they said, what's important is not being the first, but making sure you're not the only. Are you bringing somebody else behind? So the idea of 2 quarterbacks, I think, really epitomizes, okay, that really is some degree of success. So a single coach, we need to have more.
Well, that's, looking at the coaching. So it's been a long time since, you had the Rooney Rule and the work that the Fritz Pollard Alliance has been doing.
Don't blame it on me. You had the Rooney?
No, not me. So at what point does it actually get, and how will it ever get teeth? And how do those changes? I mean, we have DeMeco Ryans getting hired as the head coach of the Houston Texans. Right. Good move. But how do you put teeth? I mean, can you put teeth in the Rooney Rule? Because there's been a history since especially the last few years, where it seems as if they're not real interviews. It's like, check the box, we talked to this guy. Yeah. Does it ever get teeth?
Well, I'm not going to say that's universally the case, but that is one of the problems that emerges. So I am not going to defend as a standalone the Rooney Rule. Yeah, I think you're right in that sense, and it is kind of like, again, it's 2 old guys here. When I do my local podcast with Bill Roden, I think about old heads trying to come up with some new thoughts, but we are of the generation that saw the signing of the Civil Rights Act in '64, the Voting Rights Act in '65, and we've also now seen, for example, vaccinations. We saw polio. We saw this kind of last round of stuff, and what we kind of learned is laws can make things better, rules can make things better, vaccinations can make things better, but they're not necessarily gonna wipe out the problem. So if we compare the Rooney Rule, and this is really giving the Rooney Rule some credit, to the 64, 65 kinds of acts, there is progress in terms of focusing on the issue, in terms of you will be punished if you violate this practice, which is, I say that's a little bit tongue in cheek, because beyond Matt Millen in the first couple of years, $250,000 fine for hiring Mariucci with the Lions without interviewing anybody else. But beyond that, there have been, the Raiders had kind of a violation year. Jerry Jones,
the Raiders a violation? What?
Jerry Jones has been a violator. Again, by my definition, don't come at me. So, your point about the teeth is pretty meaningful. And as we saw, I've been fortunate and probably about to be fired at some point to be a consultant with the NFL for almost 20 years. I mean, since the beginning of the Rooney Rule, for sure. So we're right at 20 years in terms of the time I've engaged with him on this issue. And I was so optimistic in the first couple of years. And you'll recall there was this great effectiveness that took place. I mean, we went from, you think about Art Shell in '89 as 1, then it got up to the highs of 3. And then during since 2003 till today, there were times where there were as many as 8 African-American head coaches. I'll tell you what, though, here's something I was again, the idea of being professor emeritus, you have time to read old stuff you haven't looked at for a while. There's this, and Google this, anybody that wants to know more about this. Shaq says that all the time, so I'll say that too. Google it if you want to know some more about it. But this is Professor Joe Mills Braddock, Jomills Braddock, at University of Miami. He's kind of a little bit near contemporary to the great Dr. Harry Edwards, one of your Cal professors and great guy in his own right. But he was testifying before Congress in 1979, and happened, and he went on through 80. He had written a piece hired by the NFLPA, unbelievably. Pete Rozelle would not touch the topic at the time, but the PA said, "Well, why aren't there any black head coaches?" And so Braddock does this work based on EEOC types of investigations. And I used to know the numbers, but it's just striking to think about this. So in 1980, he testifies, according to EEO regulations and how you would measure what the workforce should look like, by this time, there should be 10 African-American head coaches and also something like 63 assistants. And so in 1980, there were 0. And think about this too. And I don't know if the way it was written up, you couldn't tell if he meant there should be 10 in that season or 10 over some period of time. But there have never been 10 in a single season. There have been over time, I think, 18 African-American head coaches overall. So it is an ongoing problem, like so many that we have, that needs to be addressed directly. And I'll say this too, because it's my new mantra and thinking about this. So my 20 years of working on this stuff with the NFL, taking, should I tell you, taking no credit, right? Is there credit to be had? But the one thing that I always think about is there's a whole lot of hoops that coaches of color, so beyond black coaches, and women now, are being asked to go through in terms of attending seminars and trying to do all this special stuff. And by the way, the white owners, except for my man in Jacksonville, the white owners sit back and say, okay, as you said, oh, all I gotta is check the box. Okay, I'll do that. Now let me hire who I want to hire. I mean, it's not universally, but there is that option. That's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything. Okay, now I got to interview 2. Okay, that's what the box says. That's what I'll do. And then, the complexities of race. I'll tell you the year where I threw my hands up when Mike McDaniel gets hired by the Miami Dolphins. And all of a sudden, we discover, I think his characterization, he's biracial. So therefore, by virtue of the rules created in conjunction with the Rooney Rule over time, the San Francisco 49ers, who developed him, get rewarded for the development of this guy that just kind of late to the game says he's biracial, which gets you to say, well, wait a minute, why are we doing this whole thing? And so there's a lot of issues. The focus, if you're thinking about who is it that we're most concerned about, in some ways it is men who had played the game, but also others that are diverse, that, because there's so many coaches that never played the game that are there, but I think most hurt have been men who played the game.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope we're not at an era where somebody shows up with their 23andMe and says 0.2% African American, I qualify. But
yeah, I was having conversations with the league when that came up, and it's an important issue too. I think almost universally, and we've had some problems with this, you have to go with self-identification. I mean, the last thing, especially if you got a business enterprise you're trying to run, is you want to become the racial identity police. So that's such a tough issue. And I don't know. And it's probably a more heartfelt kind of issue, the ways I've heard him try to portray that he is biracial and all those sorts of things. So I'm not belittling it. I'm using it as an
sure,
illustration of the issues that exist.
Well, I think the issues we see in the NFL, and there's some I think we've seen some progress over the years. We've certainly seen it on the playing field. The very issue of quarterbacks, and on a recent podcast that I listened to that you were so kind to forward me. I mean, so many great black quarterbacks never got the opportunity because of the color of their skin to play quarterback. Oh, you're a safety, you're a wide receiver, and then you had, Pittsburgh's own the slash. Well, we can't really call you a quarterback. We're going to call you a punt returner and a receiver, and maybe you'll be like before Wildcat quarterback term was coined to do that. We've gotten to the point now where these, they're looking, they want the best quarterback. And this is giving opportunities that I think haven't existed before. So that's a good thing. So on the playing field, there's progress being made. In the coaching environment, it's been a tougher road to hoe, but hopefully they'll make some more progress down the road. I think there's voices pushing for it, but, I don't want to get all political, but, in case you haven't heard, there's still racism that exists.
Not funny, but funny that you say it in that kind of way. I will tell you what, though, I actually wrote about this, and Du Bois writes about it, and Harry Edwards talks about it. Now I can't remember the distinction between the two, but there is progress versus change. I mean, I think change is the momentary thing. It can change back, but progress is something that's more permanent. It does seem that in terms of quarterbacks, there is real progress. Coaching, there's periodic change, but it keeps drifting back and nobody's figured out the equation. But if you want to know a place that is bang your head against the wall, head will explode if you try to figure out how to fix that, it's in ownership. The idea more black, brown people in ownership is so deeply woven into the global economic position, the historic lack of engagement in the economic system by especially American black and brown people. And the idea that you got to pay $5-6 billion, and if you're going to do that, you need to have a third of that in cash. NFL, other leagues, it's lesser amounts, and there are now paths that you can get in for some limited interest and that sort of thing. But to be a controlling owner, that's like think about it. You and I, as dim-witted and underpaid and all the stuff that we were in the 80s, when Donald Sterling bought the Clippers for $13.5 million. We didn't have it ourselves. I'll speak for you on that.
Yeah, that's safe.
But we could have figured it out. Now today, for sure, we could figure out 13.5. I mean, that would not that we have it, but how you may have it now. I don't know. You're hardworking guy, but the idea of 5-6 billion, I have no idea. I have no, you really have to be in a whole nother game to be.
That's why. Who are the two most recent new owners? A Walton in Denver, and for a Walton, the Walmart people to drop a few $1 billion is like, oh, what's in the cookie jar? Oh, but you have and we've gotten to a point now where it seems almost as if absent generational wealth, there's no access to ownership.
No, that's right. I mean, maybe there's still a on-ramp for us, the private equity. I think that the tech thing, since our crypto thing's been exposed, maybe you and I shouldn't run into that. But think about it, Ballmer, what was he? I forget what barriers people broke, the 1 billion or 2 billion barrier, and the Guggenheim
at the Dodgers,
Dodgers. The idea that you move $1-2 billion away from multiple billions, and it moves from sitting in one place to sitting in this, which sports franchise is, sitting in this asset, is something it's very much, it's kind of like buying a house. There's going to be some stuff, and I got to make some regular payments on things, but I have this wealth that allows me to do that. And by the way, unlike Well, maybe like, a house in Culver City, if you bought it back in the day. Now look how much it's worth because it's set and you were able to hold on to it.
Yeah.
But you got to be able to get in. You got to be able to get in.
And that's the thing, and I want to make a quick turn and leave professional sports away and touch for a minute on the collegiate space. And as a fan of it, I'm asking you to write a new edition of The Miseducation of the Student Athlete, because I think collegiate sports have changed so dramatically and in such a crazy way that getting through it is frightening. If you consider the fact that the recent Alston case, just cut the NCAA off at the knees, and now you have all these the other case in Judge Wilkins' court in Northern District that's pending, and no national rules, and some states with rules and some without rules. And the specter of, oh, NIL is fine, but it's not pay to play. I'm calling bullshit on no pay to play. That's just my personal opinion.
You know what? So I appreciate. I see my Amazon numbers going up because you called out my latest book, 20. I don't know if you can still call 2016 or 17, whatever it was, latest. But if I was to rewrite that, as it was a word to read. I went to Dorsey High School. If I rewrote that book, that's
safe.
I don't want to call Venice out either, so we'll see.
Hey, Grant High Lancer here. Let's keep it valid.
I'm sorry. But the idea of how do you fix college sports? And so when I wrote that was the thought, and you're exactly right. So that book has a lot of kind of puts a nail in the coffin, at least for anything that I've written about the idea of giving college athletes and allowing college athletes to earn money. It puts a nail in the coffin without that being problematic at all. I wrote a book in the late 80s, early 90s that really had to take the time to explore the whole myth of amateurism. Think about, we've been around to see this whole progression where now everybody accepts that outright. Everybody, 80% of the world. There are still those that say, sport for the glory of sport. Gosh, those were the days. And it's, college sports is ruined as a result of the money. But that's not the case. And that's what we've all sort of struggled to say. Now it's there's still the last vestiges of doing that, though. The idea of, well, there's got to be some middle people in between providing the funds, and you can use an agent for this stuff, but not that. So all those sorts of things are still problematic and still unnecessary. I've said forever, and this is one of the few things I carry with me from an economics degree from Stanford is the idea of how markets can make things happen. And if you just opened up and said, okay, free for all, colleges, whatever you want to do to get that kid out of high school, have at it. There could be some chaos, mayhem, some crazy payments, sort of like we've seen with NIL, with some athletes getting some numbers that I say, that really doesn't make sense. The economics don't make sense. But it all settles out in the end. And guess what? And nobody gets hurt. I mean, especially, if there's more harm done to have a kid inspired not to go to college, which is a whole nother discussion, than the idea of here's money to get you to come into this place. And maybe you find that this education thing is not so bad for what you want to do for the rest of your life. Or maybe you find out, which is my case, you're not as good on the field of play as you thought. So you look around and say, oh, well, maybe I should think, maybe law school is something I can do. So, but which is much better, baseball, hockey, I love you sports that say, we're going to get you out of this school thing before you can get a chance to go too far. So the idea that there's some money dangled and delivered because we've seen some cases where it's been dangled, kids get there and it's not there, and this transfer portal too. Oh boy.
Oh, don't that one. That one, I don't know who came up with that idea.
Hey, free agency. Free.
It is free agency. Oh, let's see. I'm playing at, East whatever Tech, and I'm really good. And then a certain school at, 37th and Hoover calls me up and says, hey, if even though, come here and we have a great NIL program, and it's free agency.
Right.
And you see when the Blitnikoff winner leaves Pittsburgh to come to USC, those things kind of you say to yourself, what's happening? And, as you pointed out, I guess it was in the 30s, it was the NC2A that came up with the concept of the student athlete to try to distinguish them from a professional athlete. But it's a fine line and a slippery slope, and any other phrase you want to use, between amateurism and professionalism certainly in D1 football and men's and women's basketball now.
No, it really is, but again, I don't know how problematic it is. And again, if you let these things happen enough times, you hear about the Blitnikoff winner transferring, and what if it doesn't go well and it happens 5 other times? Then finally there'll be a Blitnikoff winner saying, maybe I should stay where I am. The acres of diamonds, that everything I need is really right here. And it's the greener grass thing doesn't happen as frequently. But if we congest it and we don't allow the movement to happen, mistakes will keep being made. But I don't, I have thought about it, again, I'm trying to make this about my sordid sports career at Stanford. About sophomore year, the writing was on the wall that, you're not going to play here. And I do wonder, if I had the opportunity to go somewhere else, would I go and then not play it at somewhere else? I mean, it's like a second recruitment bite at the apple for somebody. Says, hey, that coach isn't treating you right, but we can take care of you at Old State U in a way that the place you're in right now is not doing. But this is, so this is what's the problem we have with all this? It is our paternalistic self saying we don't want kids to make bad decisions. I think that's where you and I are. A lot of people are. I don't like the idea of this. It's not, it's tradition. But I'm more worried about, is it the right thing for a kid to make these kinds of moves, or who's doing the counseling for that?
Look, I think it's more, I've always been a proponent, because when I went to school, when there weren't cars or anything or phones, and it was ancient history, guys on scholarship, a lot of them had a hard time, putting food on the table. Right. They had a hard time taking care of other stuff because of the restrictions on, having a job, making money as a scholarship athlete. And I've always, been of the mind that 99% of these college scholarship athletes have their 4 or 5, or I guess 6-year window of college eligibility to sort of have an opportunity. And after that, they're going to be in the workplace like the rest of us. Yeah. And for them to have the opportunity to, be able to, do a radio commercial and say, hey, I'm eating at, Joe's Diner on Monday night after our games for the best food, and I get paid for that, and I get a, free meal and a little walking around money. I'm all for that, because I think displacing the alumni handshake is a really good thing.
Yeah.
And I think getting to that point is great, but with no controls, and it just keeps, and everybody likes to say, as I said earlier, it's not pay to play. But if I'm going to a school that has an NIL collective with $10 million and my school doesn't have one, and somebody wants me to play the sport, and how many of these situations, I don't know. I mean, you have these opportunities, and I hate to get deep in the sociological implications of it, but you go home and mom and dad and you say, hey, I'm going to get more money if I go here, if I stay at school. Are parents saying, well, what else is there? What about your education? What about a degree from here versus a degree from there? Are you talking about degrees, or are we just talking about money you can make? Much longer topic for conversation, but those are the issues that concern me most. I don't have a problem with somebody at a school having the opportunity to make some money off of their notoriety as a college athlete.
Yeah,
It's all of the ways it spins out that become very dangerous for society.
But Bobby, this is the oldest story in the world, right? It's little Bobby. You're 16 now. I know you want to go off to that thing called college way out there somewhere, but we really need you here on the farm. So we don't want you to go off and do something like that. We want you to stay here on the farm and then take over the farm.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I mean, that's kind of the same version of, oh, no, don't go to school X because they don't have a collective. We want you to go to that school that's not as good and send some more money home. That's your way to stay and take care of the cows now, is to go to the school that's going to give you more. I mean, it's the same.
Yeah, well, look, I can even tell you, in my case, my mother pleaded with me to go to UCLA because she was afraid of what would happen if I went to Berkeley.
Well, she was right.
She was right.
I mean, a school that was called Berkeley as you enrolled. I mean, what do you expect?
I got what I bought. I got the benefit of the bargain. What can I say? Well, Ken, look, we've gone a little bit over our time. Obviously,
this wasn't quite sports shorts. This is sports medium long.
Yeah, right, something like that. But I really appreciate you stepping in, and if I didn't notice at the top of the lengthy introduction, thank you for all you've done for the Sports Lawyers Association as a longtime board member, as a past president, as a dragged in kicking and screaming treasurer, all of the things you've done for our organization. And as a reminder to everyone, please go to our site, sportslaw.org, register to become a member, provide a lot of special member benefits. And we have some great webinars coming up. In Women's History Month, we have one at the start of March. And we have our annual conference live in May in Los Angeles, focusing on the athlete, which will be, I think, really terrific. We're all back together live and in person. So we'll see you all soon. See you in a couple of weeks. Ken, enjoy the game. Enjoy the weather. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. It's, as always, a great pleasure.
Anytime. Good to see you. Thank you.
See you. Bye.